Have you ever noticed how much little people, especially like my 9 grandchildren, will imitate when you make faces at them? As a grandpa, I get to get away with a lot of really weird stuff as a grandpa, like sitting in a fast food restaurant watching a little kid at another table strapped into his high chair where he can't get up or get away, and I start making faces at him. And after a while, they start making faces back at me. The best part is when mom doesn't realize why the kid's making faces because she can't see me, just the kid who's winking and making faces at me. And I find that opportunity, well, for me, it's a blast. I have a great time with it and usually get a high five or a fist bump from the little guy as I leave. Did you know that your leadership has exactly the same feature in it, and you don't have to be a grandpa to utilize it? No, you don't. Your leadership has exactly the same feature that allows me to make faces at somebody else's child and see them do it back to me when nobody else knows why they're doing it. Your leadership does that. That's what we're going to talk today. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. John Maxwell calls it the law of the picture. To summarize the law of the picture, he says, people do what people see, which means people imitate those that influence them. If there are people in your life that follow what you do, maybe they follow the investments that you make. Maybe they follow the relationships that you have. Maybe they follow the career path. They want to go to the same kind of school, get the same kind of degree, move into the same kind of career field. Maybe because they like law enforcement or firefighting or medical practice. Maybe they just want to be an astronaut just like you were because they're following in your footsteps. They're doing what they saw you do. That is such a powerful tool, and it's such a huge opportunity for those of us who have any kind of influence as leaders. And the power that it possesses is the ability to actually shape the direction of the future. Now, I still believe that one of the challenges we see today is that we have people who have inserted themselves into the picture, kind of like I do in the fast food restaurant. Mom wants to see that her little one eats all of his vegetables, or that he's paying attention to what he's doing and not spilling his drink in his lap, or that he is not throwing food across the room. I would be a very bad influence if I sat 2 tables away, got his attention against mom's better knowledge, and taught him to throw French fries, or taught him to pour his cup upside down, or to shake his drink in front of mom. That would be a really bad influence, but we know the law of the picture works. Once I have that little one's attention, people do what people see. As parents, we try to be that number one influence in our children's lives. We try to be the one that they model, that they look after, that they want to know what we're up to so that they can do what we do. We want them to see us succeed. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's relationally, maybe it's at all the goals that we set for ourselves. I saw a great meme the other day. It said, when all of the students come into my class, they take the test, they pass the test, and they have great scores. They've learned to do everything that I've taught them to do. I've done a great job. But when all of my students come into my class and they leave better people, then I've reached my goal. See, sometimes our job and our goal, they're not directly attached to each other. Let that one settle in for a minute. Sometimes our job and our goal are not attached to each other. Our job might be to meet certain KPIs. I heard someone say the other day of their television network that their KPIs would be redirected to include diversity and inclusion and equity. And while all of those are good things, I don't know that those are profitability measures that as KPIs will determine whether or not your organization has success. Sure, you'll win some brownie points, and you might even have a few better people on your team that may have been overlooked before. I get that. That's fair. But as KPIs, I'm not sure that those are actually going to be the long-term benefit that you're looking for. That's just my opinion. But when an organization, whether it's the classroom or it's the job that you have. When the organization has an insert from the outsource that doesn't necessarily meet all the goals within the organization, then you may have job and goals that are unrelated to each other. You may have certain tasks that you have to accomplish, standards that you have to meet, measures that you've got to live up to that have nothing to do with actually productively accomplishing the task before you. Goals, job, not the same. But if I, as a grandpa, Poppy is what they call me, if Poppy were to sit across the room while mom and dad were trying to discipline their little ones, and I were to be a bad influence, making faces at them, causing them to laugh while they're getting in trouble, that kind of influence would be a bad influence from the outside, but because I have influence in their life, it's still going to be influence. People do what people see. So what does that mean for us as leaders? Well, it means that we have a couple of responsibilities. The first of which is to make sure that when we're doing our job as a leader, that there's some consistency, some congruency between the job and the goals. Don't establish goals that have nothing to do with the job. Don't establish KPI and cause people to do, based on meeting those standards, something that has nothing to do with their job. Why would you want to set a standard of performance that has nothing to do with their actual task at hand? The next thing you've got to do as a leader is understand that you do have influence. And sometimes that influence is simply seen as micromanagement. An individual team lead may be trying to get their team to work on a specific practice at this moment. They want to make sure that they up the scale, so to speak, on customer service perhaps, or how we answer the phone, or let's make sure that while we're on the phone with our customers that we're standing, we're smiling, our faces are open, and our voices sound like we're having a good time, not like we're upset that we had to answer the phone. Nobody wants to talk to this person. But maybe as a leader 2 or 3 levels up, we insert ourselves into that team and we think, well, that's a small task for them to be working on. Let's give them a new assignment. Let's give them something else to accomplish. And not to say that they shouldn't be accomplishing that, but generally you can only serve one master. There's only one specific goal that you can do at a time. Ideally, whatever that goal, that target, that job productivity rating is based on is sequential. It's layered. So if you do this right, then this is going to happen. And if you do this and this right, then this is going to happen. And eventually we'll reach our goal because we're doing all the right steps along the way to get to that goal, not because we have these steps over here and a goal way over there that has nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, that does seem to happen a lot in leadership. And it's like grandpa sitting across the room making faces when the little one's getting disciplined for making faces at the wrong time. Yeah, we do it a lot, unfortunately, as leaders. We don't recognize that our influence, that a single word, that calling someone a name, that inserting our opinion before all of the facts have been laid out. We're doing the same thing. People do what people see. When they hear us say something, make a conjecture, insert our opinion, guess what they do? Well, either they act on that opinion or they insert their own. And that's not always good. We have to be responsible as leaders to know that whatever it is that we're inserting, our opinion, our ideas, our set of facts, that they're filtered through those between us and those that we're influencing, that we're following the chain of command both up and down. There's a great book I read several years ago called Daddy at Work. It's a little silver book. I don't remember who wrote it. I'm not going to be able to dig it off the shelf at this moment because I don't know exactly where it's at, but I will find it and I'll make sure that you see it. Daddy at Work has a really good principle. One of many, but one of those really good principles is protect up and protect down. So to protect down might be, to use a home analogy, the little one gets in trouble and mom says, you need to go to your room. And the little one decides, I'm not going to go to my room. I'm going to fight you. I'm going to argue. In fact, I'm going to overrule you and I'm going to go to dad and I'm going to say to dad, mom's trying to make me go to the room and I'm just trying to mow the yard. Well, if dad is a good leader, dad says, let me talk to mom and figure out why mom wants you to go to your room. But until then, go to your room. Not to contradict that leadership. You might see the same thing in an organization. In an organization, the immediate boss says, we're not going to do it like that. In fact, you need to undo whatever you've done, refill those forms, go back to the website, take those pages down, start over. The graphics are wrong. You got the wrong colored logo, whatever it is. And oftentimes the rebellious employee will go around that leader and go over their head and say, hey, I want it to be like this. And so says it's supposed to be like this. And a leader who's not paying close attention will say, yeah, I agree with you. Go ahead and do it that way. And I'll deal with that. Okay, that's not protecting down. That's not protecting down. And here's what happens when you do that. People do what people see. Which means if you allow and encourage and support the idea of jumping the chain of command for people to get their way, you're going to have an entire organization that will jump the chain of command. And the next thing you know, you're not a leader over a group of leaders who are doing their job. You're managing the entire organization from your chair. You'll be doing all of the work of all of the people that you've delegated to because you've usurped their authority and you didn't let them do their job. That, my friends, is called micromanagement, and it will turn out to be eventually a train wreck. You can only successfully lead 5 to 6 people. Make those your managers and leaders. That's why they're there. You've delegated authority and decision-making power. Now, if you feel like they're not competent at that, that doesn't mean that you undermine and overrule and usurp their authority. It means you replace them or you train them up. Now, on the other hand, protecting down and protecting up would be if I, as an employee, came to my supervisor and said, hey, I don't like this new policy. In fact, I think we ought to change it. In fact, I think we should all rebel against it. Well, if I'm a lower level employee and I have a supervisor immediately above me who answers to a supervisor above them or a CEO, that next level supervisor should say, I understand your conditions. I understand your problems, your qualms, even your concerns about this. And I can't say that I disagree with all of them. Here's what I can say, though. Until the top level organization decision is made, the people who make and enforce that decision have asked for my compliance to do so. And so at this moment, we're not going to change that. We're not going to fight that. We're not going to buck that. But I will take your concerns and I will take them up. In fact, a lot of times, a good mid-level manager will say, listen, I hear your concerns. Let me make note of them. I'll noodle on it. I'll revisit the policy. And when I have the opportunity to take it up the chain, I will. But for now, you just need to follow the policy as it was written. That's protecting up. That's not saying, yes, I agree with you. Let's go after those horrific leaders that we have who came up with this new policy. That's not a good idea. The same thing works the other way. And if that were at home, it might sound like, hey, Dad's trying to make me mow the yard. It's 100 degrees outside. Well, you better go get the lawnmower started, but I'll go talk to Dad. Or you just need to do what Dad said. I understand it's hot out there. Take a lot of water. But the idea of undermining someone else's authority, stepping into that role and inserting yourself, inserting your opinion, inserting your ideas between the people who are getting the work done and the people who are making the policies, that's not a good practice. You've got to protect up and you've got to protect down. And remember that all of those people you're leading, even the ones that are not on your team, they all know the law of the picture. People do what people see. I don't have to be the Poppy of a little kid at a fast food restaurant. I just have to know that as Poppy, I have a certain kind of influence over little people. It's something about this funny looking face of mine. But when I make faces at little people, they tend to make faces back. And if I do that in a way that's disruptive to their family, if I do that in a way that disrupts what their mom is trying to do, like trying to get them to pay attention to their food instead of cut up with me, then I am usurping that authority. I'm inserting myself or injecting myself into a relationship that becomes a problem. Guess what will happen from then on? Anytime that little person has a hard time with mom or dad or with whatever authority figure, a teacher, a police officer, they're going to be looking for the exposure that gives them attention outside of that authority triangle. You follow me? They're going to be looking for exposure that gives them attention outside of that triangle. That's why we have a lot of teenagers today that when law enforcement engages them, or another authority engages them, a school principal, a classroom teacher, in the middle of that engagement, they will look aside and try to find the nearest camera to show out for. Yeah, that's an old phrase, show it out. That exposing yourself. You're looking for that attention to be exposed to get you out of the problem that you're in with the authority so that you can behave for those in the periphery rather than those that are in your face. People do what people see. You know you've heard it as long as you've been alive. If there's a little one around and they do something really, really stupid, it's hard sometimes not to laugh. That emotional response, that gut level, oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Well, that's kind of to be expected. But at some point, you've got to back up and say, is my laughter inspiring bad behavior? Is my attention, is my paying attention to them causing them to do what normally they wouldn't do? If it is, then you are the outside influence. You are permitting and encouraging destructive behavior. And if it's starting as a toddler and carrying on into their teens, what do you think young adults are going to do? What do you think they're going to do halfway through their careers, whether it's an educational career or an actual job career? What are they going to do? They're going to always look for the attention. They're always going to look for the chance to be in front of the camera to gain the attention of the whole world so as to excuse themselves from the authority. Look, if you're a leader, if you influence people, you're a leader. If you're a leader and you influence people, be sure you guard that influence. Make sure that you know what it is that you're showing. People do what people see. What do they see in you? Do they see good behavior? Do they see respect for authority? Do they see following the policies and the processes, or at least bucking them in the proper way? If they do see that in you, then that's what they will do. If they see in you something else, they may soon be looking for attention from anybody to avoid doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's my challenge for you today. Ask yourself, as people see you perform in life as a leader, as an influencer, is it the kind of behavior that you would want them to mimic, to imitate, and to follow? People do what people see. What do they see in your leadership? I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.